If you hold Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, or any other crypto, it seems that the entire crypto market is now in panic mode, even though in a typical market environment, Trump going live on a 60 minutes interview in another attempt to pump the crypto market by stating the US is going to dominate in the space. We've not only seen the crypto market respond poorly, but even sell back off as Bitcoin is down to $105,000 on the day, while XRP dumped yet again to a range low of 225. Ethereum dumped for a new local low of $3,560 odd. Now this is all while Jerome Powell is trying to quietly manage a raging fire inside of the banking sector, and the Fed quietly injected $29.4 billion into the system. And so we're going to cover what this actually means for Bitcoin and the entire crypto market, alongside this other announcement directly from Ripple on how they acquired yet again another company called Palisade, which offers fast and scalable wallet solutions, which are ideal for on and off ramps and global corporate payments. I'll be covering the charts, some on-chain analytics, the government shutdown, and of course we'll be covering the charts and key price levels that you need to watch out for to know whether or not we're going to continue in a bull market or whether we are at the start of a bear market, and how to prepare and position your crypto portfolio moving forward. So stick around until the end. And before we dive into the video, if you haven't had a chance to yet, or you're planning to work crypto into your retirement plan by rolling over a 401k, an IRA, or a Roth IRA, then check out iTrustCapital in the link in the description or the bio below, where when you sign up through our link using BullRun9, you'll get a $100 funding bonus. And what makes this offering so great is not just the fact that you get a bonus, but they also offer a bunch of different cryptos that you literally cannot find anywhere else in most IRA accounts. So this is going to be completely self-managed, extremely low fees, only 1% on trades, and no annual or hidden fees. Their entire team is also not commissioned, which means there is no pressure to move your money into any of these other accounts. So yes, these IRAs and Roth IRAs are one of the best tax advantaged ways for you to stick with the market and also get ahead of the curve on your retirement. So go ahead and check out iTrustCapital in the link below, claim that bonus by signing up, and ultimately this helps us fund value-based videos just like this so we can continue making them. Now let's dive into the video, and as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777, and if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the Bull Runners channel. If you're new here, my name is Paul. In this first portion of the video, I'm going to be diving a little bit into the macro, talking about Trump, what he shared on China and crypto, and essentially what I would consider a last-ditch effort, even though he does truly believe this stuff, to save the crypto market, considering things aren't looking too hot on the price action side. Everything is down, even with a Trump announcement, which means either the market is truly exhausted or we're no longer taking Trump's statements around crypto very seriously. And that in and of itself should be a bit of a concern for someone that could consistently pump the crypto market with a single tweet. Now it's holding less and less weight. So let's have a listen to what he shared.
Now China's getting into it very big right now. If you want to go after people, you're going to kill that industry, and it'll be very bad. Tremendous number of jobs. I campaigned positively on crypto, very openly. I campaigned. Biden campaigned against it. When Biden found out that I was getting like 100% of the crypto vote, which was a lot, he switched totally, and he went in favor of crypto. They went totally in favor. They had many people under indictment. They let them all go. They let them all go. You know that. Many people were under indictment. Biden was a corrupt president. Biden went all in on crypto at the very end because he thought he could get some votes. It didn't work. They voted for me. I want to make crypto great for America. That's the only thing. I don't want to have somebody else have crypto and have China be #1 in the world in crypto. Because in crypto, it's a kind of an industry where basically you're going to have #1 and you're not going to have a #2. And right now, we're #1 by a long shot. I want to keep it that way. The same way we're #1 with AI, we're #1 with crypto. And I want to keep it that way.
Now, virtually everything he shares is common sense and true, considering that the United States holds more Bitcoin than any other nation in the world, well above China at 190,000 Bitcoin. And recently they acquired a ton more Bitcoin when it was confiscated because of illegal or illicit activities. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that yes, Trump still wants to be number one in crypto. It's just that none of his statements surrounding crypto hold weight for the market anymore, considering everything is down well after that announcement. And even then, as we are moving forward with crypto regulation, hopefully a market structure bill by the end of the year, as Trump's appointee David Sachs reinforced the need for clear regulations to establish America as the crypto capital and retain talent, at the end of the day, it's not really doing much for the space. Now, the reason I believe the market is currently down on the day is because there's been a lot of uncertainty surrounding what the Federal Reserve just did by Jerome Powell and injected a record $29.4 billion into banks via a repo facility. Now, this was an overnight liquidity injection to essentially help banks that reserves fell to a 4-year low. And this is the very first time that this is, or better yet, this is the largest single day repo since 2020. So think about what's currently happening. And if you remember early 2020, we experienced one of the biggest black swan events, and the markets were already giving us signals into that event. And so many people believe that this exhaustion pump in the TradFi markets and the strong deviation in the traditional financial markets versus crypto is leading to the point where we are actually starting a bear market. And I know that yesterday's video and the one that I made, I was talking about how we're still in a bull market as long as we can hold a range. Well, in a single day, that can change. And you need to be able and willing to change with the market, because no one is bigger than the market. In other words, I'm not trying to be right. I'm simply trying to be on the right side of the market and use the signals that the price action is telling me in order to plan or prep into the upcoming week and months. Now, a lot of people are considering this $29.4 billion injection into the banking system QE, or quantitative easing, and essentially that would increase M2, more money, more stimulus in the system, leading to higher prices in stocks, in crypto, but that's actually not the case. This was a repo, which is a short-term liquidity bridge, not a stimulus program. And the only reason that they would extend this is because some banks are seriously in trouble, which is an indicator of underlying weakness in the general market. The Fed lends cash overnight to banks or dealers, taking treasuries as collateral. The next day, the banks buy them back with some interest. In other words, this is not to stimulate the markets. This is because we have some serious underlying problems. And not too long ago, we were already talking about how JP Morgan Chase had started to find some cockroaches in regional banks, one of those being Zion. And now regional banks are facing a perfect storm of credit problems, with commercial real estate loans comprising 44% of their portfolios versus just 13% for the largest, or more importantly, the systemically important banks. In other words, not only is there a fraud factor at play, but there's also a concentration risk, which found 59 out of the 158 largest banks have commercial real estate exposure exceeding 300%. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're in any large city, especially the one I'm in Portland, Oregon, the amount of really nice big buildings in places like downtown that are simply not being used and selling for literally pennies on the dollar because nobody wants to spend the money to put their businesses inside of these big buildings anymore is absolutely insane. Commercial real estate will never be the same. And that's what's on so much of these balance sheets. And so the take from Hedgie is actually quite interesting, as he states the combination of commercial real estate concentration, interest rate pressure, and emerging fraud cases suggest that the underlying problems have worsened. And right now we are actually seeing that in the markets. I think markets are just exhausted. I think that if we were going to continue to climb for new highs, it needs to happen very soon. But I don't see any situations or catalysts here in the near term, even with positive news that we've seen, that have pushed the price any higher, which means we don't have as many new buyers entering the space as we would like, or people that do want to enter the space are simply priced out and are waiting for better prices. So when banks resort to extend and pretend strategies while facing refinancing walls on $1 trillion in loans, it creates conditions for a more severe crisis than what we saw in 2023. And right now, regional banks across the board are sinking on concern about bad loans. And yes, this can create contagion and fear in the markets. And if this happens in the TradFi market, it will affect the crypto market. And already the crypto market, aside from a lot of these major tech stocks and companies, is not only struggling to maintain ranges, but is selling off beforehand, which means that the crypto market might be a leading indicator into what happens next. So we're going to dive into that price action here very shortly, but I do want to cover the most recent announcement from Ripple on their acquisition of a company called Palisade, and essentially how it increases the scale at which Ripple can do next-gen custody and payments infrastructure, which is awesome. And we've seen so many great pieces of news and acquisition that should increase what's going to occur and happen on the XRPL. However, it is important to remember that much of these ventures are funded by selling the XRP token. And that's not a theory or me trying to spread FUD. It's just trying to create awareness around the reality that the largest asset on the balance sheet for Ripple as a company is their holding of that XRP token. Now, obviously, they don't want the price to collapse or fall out from under it, but in a market environment such as this one, any amount of selling will actually create bigger dumps than normal because there simply isn't as much demand. So when we look at the XRP token right now, currently sitting at $2.30, we're also noticing that there is more circulating supply. Now it's interesting because 40 billion tokens are sitting inside of that escrow. Every single month, another billion are released. Ripple as a company decides, you know what, we don't want to harm the market, so we're gonna put them back into escrow. But it's important to note that over the course of 40 months, 1 billion new tokens entering the space. If those tokens are sold, which the Ripple CTO David Schwartz did confirm they can sell all 40 billion of those tokens to third parties, then 1 billion tokens of sell pressure every single month would absolutely trash the price. Now that wouldn't be wise. They're likely not going to do that. The whole reason they've been able to acquire and grow as a company separate from XRP is because of XRP. But it's important to note more supply has reached the market, which means they've likely been selling the supply that entered the market, but also some of the supply that's been sitting inside of their wallets, which you can go ahead and check on the blockchain in order to acquire companies like Palisade. Now, directly on their website, they state how this acquisition will significantly expand Ripple's custody capabilities to directly serve the core needs of fintechs, crypto native firms, and corporates. Again, all amazing things for the Ripple company and any of their current investors, usually venture capital or accredited investors. But we're not talking directly XRP, although a lot of these business flows and blockchain integrations will run on the XRPL, and the XRP token will be used for transactions. The burn amount is so extremely small and so little of that actual value will be captured by XRP that we will really need to see a major growth in the trajectory of demand, not only for the token, but arguably probably new tokenomics. So even with trillions of dollars flowing on the XRPL, in order for the XRP token to get to $1 trillion market cap, it would have to be astronomical just based on usage, which means we actually need demand from institutional clients or players directly for the token, which means the spot ETF might be a better play for XRP holders. Either way, Ripple now has invested approximately $4 billion into the crypto ecosystem through strategic investments. And so right now we don't have a disclosed amount of money that they invested into Palisade, but they have confirmed on their site it's been about $4 billion. So if we just do the math, okay, Hidden Road, April, $1.25 billion, probably by selling the XRP token. Rail, another $200 $200 million in August. G Treasury, another $1 billion in October. Then you have Palisade for an undisclosed amount, but I'm assuming it is quite large. You do the math. And in a market environment, again, where Bitcoin is dumping, yes, XRP is going to struggle to pump as well, especially facing all of this overhead resistance. I will cover that here very shortly, but it is important to note that this isn't, again, me trying to spread FUD. It's just awareness into the situation and the reality. Because according to Crunchbase, Ripple as a company, aside from their XRP token being their largest asset on their balance sheet, worth, according to many sources, about $11 billion, they are currently sitting on about $9 billion in the XRP token. Now, through all these acquisitions, I'm assuming their valuation is going to continue to rise because of their actual business models outside of just the XRP token. They've received about $293 million in funding from venture capital, while Grok says they've raised approximately $353 million in venture capital across 12 different rounds, many of those major investors being Google, Standard Chartered, Accenture, Andreessen Horowitz, and many others. And so even back in March, a guy by the name of Pierre stated that XRP isn't a security because Ripple doesn't actually owe you utility or anything else. They are free to dump on you and have no right to do anything about it other than join them in dumping XRP. That's why XRP is not a security. To which David Schwartz, you can read it right here. This is his actual username, double verify it. He stated, this is 100% correct. In my opinion, Ripple can, will, and should act in its own interest. You should not expect Ripple to act in your interest, which means with the XRP token as well, to the detriment of your own interest or those of its shareholders. In other words, they're always going to act in the best interest of their shareholders. So on the board of Ripple or among their shareholders, if they're all in agreement, it's a good time to start selling the largest asset on their balance sheet in order to acquire other companies and diversify and then scale into all forms of business into the future of finance. Then the XRP token is likely going to suffer, even with all of those positive developments we hear. And so I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just showing you the facts as we see them. And then it's open for your interpretation and what you want to do. But either way, the current price isn't reflecting all of the bullish announcements, which leads me to believe we're either very close to the end of the cycle or XRP is going to struggle because of the sell pressure from the selling on the side of Ripple. Combine that with one of the longest shutdowns in history, which now has the potential to last through Thanksgiving, potentially even into December 1st, according to Polymarket. This would double the record for the longest shutdown. And yes, this is also going to affect confidence and certainty in the market. And again, an uncertain market environment leads to more selling, and then it's kind of just like a downward spiral. Now, before I dive into the technical analysis and on-chain with some price targets or pivot points you should pay attention to, listen, I've already shared this with you over and over and over again. If you're really trying to navigate the last couple of months and arguably through the bear market in crypto, which many people say, there's no way to make money, so I'll be out. No, there's going to be tons of ways to make money, and a lot of it's going to be on the short side, and you make money faster on the short side when the bottom falls out from many of these cryptos versus the long side. Now, that is not me saying we are officially in a bear market, but we're getting very, very close. Either way, check out Altcoin Pro University, and that fifth and sixth slide actually share all sorts of different testimonials that we've had among our students and clients, as well as gratitude-based testimonials. In other words, many of our students are grateful that they're involved in this community and have our coaching and resources in order to navigate the current market environment and arguably make far better decisions about what to do with their hard-earned money and portfolios. I've made this pitch a million times over. You know the deal. Head on over to altcoinpro.com. Check it out in the link in the bio or description below. Now let's dive back in. Okay, so currently XRP is in a downtrend. Okay, we hit our all-time highs right here. Back in July, XRP pumped to $3.66. Yes, an actual all-time high. Not making the argument for the Coinbase number of 384, which is the kimchi premium. South Korean prices, you wouldn't have actually seen that in the United States on any exchange. Double verify on any price chart with actual candlesticks. That said, we now have a series of lower highs, with our last one coming in at $3 in the start of October before the bottom fell out. We had the largest liquidation event in crypto history on October 10th. Since that point in time, the crypto market, or better yet, XRP, has struggled to rally back above 270, which seems to be our range resistance, which was once a support. So what was a support then becomes a resistance, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Now another dump on the day from 250 back down to 225, which from the VRVP perspective, or the volume profile, is a large range of support, and it is possible we bounce right back up to maybe 250. However, I am officially becoming more and more bearish with all of this positive news failing to push the price up, no new buyers entering, a lot of arguable sell pressure from Ripple as a company and major holders. And then to combine that with the on-chain analytics, you can see here that in this downtrend, this is again the high at 366. These are the next highs. This is the range bottom or lows for support. The breakdown, you can see that we have whale transactions which are greater than $1 million US dollars. In other words, this is XRP being sold at greater than $1 million of a transaction. And you see these really large spikes right here, once, twice, three times, four, five, all through this range where we're consistently trending to the downside. Notice how we had a lot up here, and that makes sense, right? Major whales taking profits into new all-time highs. What I don't like to see, and then you see this contraction of whales doing buying or selling, but into a downtrend with new lows, you're seeing an expansion in whales arguably selling, which is what pushes the price lower. That is not a good indicator that this thing is in a healthy place. So it is very much possible that unless we get back above 270 to 275 here sometime in November, XRP is no longer going to go to at least $5 by the end of the year, and the all-time high actually was 366. But with Bitcoin currently sitting at 106 and barely able to hold this range here of support down to at least 106, things are not looking too good. You can see that this is a very bearish day, and so this is Bitcoin's last and final stand at the prior range low from October before it breaks down. And yes, it might be that 126 was the all-time high of the bull market. I'm not saying we're done just yet. We still have about a week to watch this thing either close or for a wick, and then a lot of buyers to step back in and support the price. But things are looking pretty uncertain, and so for that reason, I don't want to add a risk. I'm not adding or dip buying at any moment in time right now. I would rather see strength in the market before I buy, and if we break below this range on the weekly and can't be supported into the next week, then yes, XRP is going to struggle to also hold that $2.25 range, and it's likely we'd go back down to $2, which is our next major range of support. But from a weekly time frame, XRP 100% needs to hold at least 235 in order to be kind of healthy. And so that is it for the video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This is not me trying to, again, be a fudder. I'm also not a hype guy. I'm trying to be as realistic as possible to teach you the skill sets on how to think about this market. And if you don't like how I think, totally fine. There's other creators out there. But I've done enough time in the space of crypto over the last almost decade now, and I've seen it all through multiple cycles to the point where I can confidently say when I start to see certain signals, I become more cautious because I see more volatility in the horizon. Thanks so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out Altcoin Pro if you want to be involved in my live calls or get access to any of the tools and resources that we share right here, and that is included in the membership. Much of these will actually pay for that $97 a month membership, which is why we have such a crazy good retention even into environments that are unexciting. Then check out altcoinpro.com. I will see you in the next video. Till next time, goodbye.